name is Coach B, the CEO, co-creator of Extraordinary Outcomes. I'm an ordinary person with extraordinary aspirations who believes in living life fully alive. Welcome to the Hope Channel for your Monday morning magic, where inspiration plus information equals transformation. Good morning, good morning, good morning, CEOs. How are you doing today? Welcome to Monday Morning Magic with Coach B. Welcome. Just going to turn off the background music so you guys can hear me more clearly. Good morning, CEOs. We have a great topic for you today. Yes, we do. So the topic for today is work-life integration versus balance. Yes, let me say that again. Work-life integration versus balance. What's the difference between the two and how do we show up powerfully? So let me just give you a little background history why I picked this topic today. So many of my clients are facing or living in their choice to create a work-life balance or integration. We'll get more into the semantics of it, like what's the benefit of one versus the benefit of the other, and whether or not we're in a particular occupation that will allow for work-life integration versus work-life balance. While going through the pandemic, many of us were in work-life integration. Our home life and our work life was centered in one place. We were going to work, from our peripheral view, looking at our children, making sure the children were doing their schoolwork. So both lifestyles were intertwined. But that's not the real reason why this topic or this subject is so beefy. One of the reasons why this topic is so beefy, so deep and in depth is we work most of our awake hours. So there's 24 hours in a day. Most of us spend 8 to 10 hours, and for others, maybe even 12 hours a day at work. For those of us that have an 8-hour work schedule or a 10-hour work schedule, it still feels like a 12-hour, 14-hour, 16-hour day. Why is that? Because there's prep before you go to work. There's prep time before you go to work. I have to make sure I eat. Maybe I want to exercise before I go to work. Maybe I want to check in on 1 or 2 emails before I get to work so I can start my day ahead of time. So what's actually happening is that the work creep is coming in subtle. I'll check one email, I'll answer one phone call. Then one email turns into an actual correspondence of going back and forth. Next thing you know, you're spending more time on your personal time working, whether that's before work or after work. Work-life integration versus balance is not a new topic. It's not a new subject. Let's talk about the history of work before we get deeper into the title. So Max Weber, psychologist, talked about the Protestant work ethic. The Protestant work ethic was you work hard, you work hard, and based on this dedication, this loyalty to your job, to your work, to your life, made you an honest person. If I work hard and I go beyond the call of duty, and I show up, and I just show up. There was something about this work ethic that said, you know what, if you work hard, there's some salvation involved in this. So imagine hundreds and hundreds of years ago being indoctrinated into working hard meant some level of salvation. That you were a good person if you worked hard. You weren't identified as lazy. That you were honest. You were a contributor to society. Imagine the weight of that. So, what would it mean if you were out of work? Did that mean that you weren't entitled to salvation? So, there has been an overlap of religious, philosophical underpinnings as it relates to work. And in those days, it was almost hard to separate the two. So you can already see that morally, spiritually, and possibly religiously, that this was already intertwined with your well being, your spiritual being. So if how I work is so tied into my salvation, of course I would want to do a good job. Of course I would want to work hard, especially if it was aligned with my spiritual or religious beliefs. I would not want to be left behind. And when I say being left behind, I'm being careful about language as it relates to YouTube rules and regulations, right? I wouldn't want to be left behind. I would want to see the promised land, so to speak, that I worked hard and diligently. I didn't steal, and I gave it the best that I had. So already, this is tied into our genes as a society, as a spiritual community, that working hard means that you're a good person. That working hard means that you care about your society, you care about the next person in your community. But let's move on a little bit. That's just a tidbit. But then we were in an agricultural society at one point. And during this agricultural society, work life looked different. When we think about agricultural society, we're thinking about farming. And farming was a family business. So you got to work with your family members. You got up early to do certain chores to keep the land, plant seeds, plow, turn the dirt. And we did this physically before machinery came along. So agriculturally, we're in a family business. We're growing our food. We're taking care of the land. We're farming. We're bartering. You take this, you take that, blah, blah, blah. You know what I'm saying? Blah, blah, blah. We make this exchange. And for the most part, yes, the labor was hard. If you ever try to till the ground, the work is hard. And you had to know something about the different seasons. You needed to know when to plant and when to harvest, what food grew best in what climate, X, Y, and Z. So we have import and export. Because in my climate, we grow one thing, and in your climate, you grow something else. So now we got the barter, we got import, export. Great system. And then something happened. Somebody came along, had a great idea, and said, hey, that's a lot of physical labor. That's a lot of wear and tear on the body. Maybe we can create some tools to help with farming. So now we got plowers and diggers and all kinds of tools. But also something else happened, transportation. Well, how do we get around? So this thing about mechanics, whether it's farming, whether it's the automobile industry, whatever the industry was, we began to think about industrial means to make our jobs easier on us, the human body, the human community. And in that, we said, well, if we can do it better and quicker, then we would actually have more time. But as you know, when we come out of one era and into another era, some things give way and then new things happen. For me, just a little side note, when I started listening to music, it was 8 tracks. Now we got digital music. So there's been an evolution based in what? Mechanics. We have learned some things. While working in the industrial period, something else happened. So agriculturally, we're doing fine, but it's taxing the body. There's wear and tear. Even though it's a sense of community and it's family, there's some wear and tear. Industrially speaking, we get mechanical objects to help us do our job better. It changes what the labor force looks like. And then yet another thing happens. Now we're starting to look at what's going on mentally with the employee. So we move into this humanistic workforce. So now you start to hear so much more about psychology and sociology in the workforce. So the workforce is always trying to improve or expedite their product or their service. They're trying their darndest, right, to keep product moving. Service, 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 product, 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 service, 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 product, 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 service, 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 product, product, product. Then we begin to notice, but what's happening with the person that's actually providing the labor? What's going on with their level of motivation? How can we get them to work quicker, smarter, not harder, and get more production, more productivity, more services to the masses? So what begins to happen, we start to get into all kinds of studies, the Hawthorne studies, that start to measure what? How do we increase productivity? But what they found out is there was something about internal, external motivation. And we start to look at what labor wants and what management wants. So then there becomes a history of what? Unions. Because what they discovered through many studies is that what? That management wants one thing, labor wants something else. We all want to work. People need something to do. People need to feel useful. They need to feel like they have a purpose. However, people do not want to feel like that working is at their detriment. People want to feel purposeful. People want to feel like they have something to contribute, attribute to the workforce, but they don't want to come home drained, tired, exhausted. The managers have another dilemma: product and service. How do we get these products or services out to the masses? We don't care that you don't feel motivated today. The work must be done. Then we start to realize, well, the people don't feel motivated and you're working them and working them and working them and working them. You might create something called burnout. Now you're losing your staff because now they're overworked and they don't feel fulfilled. They have resentments. They're angry. And then what can happen? You begin to get a high turnover because people start doing what? They start leaving their jobs because they're not satisfied. So this humanistic psychology begins to look at what? This workforce. How do people feel? What are people thinking about? What's the right fit? Companies started doing all types of personality assessments because they're looking for the right fit. They started designing questions in the interview to see if people were a good match. If you work in a high intensity job, there's somebody watching me out there live. Thank you for coming through. So there's that high intensity work. Can you manage that? So even the questionnaires for the interviews began to change. So now we have the background of the Protestant work ethic. Hey, be a hard worker, go beyond the call of duty. There's some salvation involved there. We have the agricultural way of living. Then we move into the industrial period. Humanistic psychology steps in and says, hey, we have to look at this workforce and what are the human needs at work. Now we are in a technological era. And people who come from an industrial period or humanistic period of employment, of work, are struggling with the technology. Just like the industrial people or workers struggled. Let me say that. I said that a little backwards. Just like the agricultural people struggled when we moved into the industrial period. So anytime there's something new in the way that we do things, there's always a learning curve for the community, for society at large. And this impacts our economic system, but we'll go into that some other time. I want to stay focused on this topic, right? So now let's talk about this. The study of work-life integration and work-life balance has been studied and continues to be studied by SIOP, the Society of Industrial and Organizational Psychology, United States Chambers of Commerce. You got Harvard Business Review. There are experts out there who are studying, again, because we're still coming from that school of humanistic psychology, right? That the human being is not meant to work 24/7. We even know this, right, from a spiritual underpinning, right? And depending on what your school of thought is, there's something about a day of rest. So individuals are not meant to work 24/7. So we're studying how can we balance work-life integration or have work-life balance when work takes up 8, 10, 12 hours of our day. And this is not including commuting. This is not counting preparation before we commute. This is not counting for other life responsibilities. So when we think about this work-life integration, we're also looking at, do we have time to grow and learn? What about our spirituality? How does finance and career or the career ladder factor into this? I've been at a job for so many years. I think I want to advance, but if I advance, what does that mean? Then health and fitness. Like, do I have time to go to the gym and take care of my body? Do I have time for my appointments? Can I take time off from work without feeling guilty, mind you? I have a doctor's appointment and I'm afraid to call my job or let my supervisor know I won't be in tomorrow because I have an appointment. And we know that when you go to the appointment, they give you one time, but the time that you actually leave is not the same. So you might be out longer than expected. And for some people, that's a hardship to have to take off a whole day from work just to take care of their medicals. And then we have environmental and community factors. No, maybe I want to volunteer. Do I have time to volunteer? And then on the other end, we have family and friends. Do I have time for my partners, for my loved ones, and my significant others? How do we balance all of this? If our work life consumes half of our awake time, if I got 8 to 12 hour workday and I sleep 6 to 8 hours, we already talking about that 2/3 of our day is gone. It's gone. So it's no wonder that so many people are dissatisfied with their lives currently. That during the pandemic, so many people, they called it the Great Resignation. So many people was like, I resign. I have a moment to sit back and reflect and think about what is it I really want out of my life. I love my job. I love the work that I do. Maybe I don't like the environment. Some people, they don't like their supervisors. Some people feel like they're not being recognized and appreciated on the job. Those emotional and mental stresses are important to the work-life integration versus the balance. But let's look at that. So when we think about integration, that's when we're on the emails before we even leave our home, or when we get in our home after a long day work. We're on the emails. We're taking one more call. We're doing one more thing. We're trying to integrate both lifestyles. And what happens is there's a bleed, right? And what do I mean by that? That it starts to overlap. And sometimes people can't tell the difference between when they're working and when it's their personal lives, because it's so merged together that even when people have their personal time, they cannot enjoy it because they're afraid that the phone is going to ring, that they're going to be called in to do one more thing. When the phone rings, there's anxiety that wells up. I hope that's not my job calling me for something. Why can't they just get ahead and do what they need to do? Why do they have to keep calling me all the time? And all of these thoughts and emotions are happening, and then the phone gets picked up or the email gets read, and then there's a reply, then there's a response. And it's your day off. Now, when you leave a circumstance like that, now you're frustrated. Now you're tired. Now you're exhausted. And then the resentment and the anger and the sadness comes in because there's no separation between work and your personal life. Some people say, well, I don't know how to create healthy boundaries in that area. The lines get blurred. And some people say, well, I'm high on the ladder of my job. I'm the CEO. I'm this, I'm that. I can't say no. I don't want to look like I'm not a team player. Excuse me. I'm trying to get a promotion. I have to do all of these things. So the question becomes, are you giving yourself a break? Why would it be so important for you to perform in this manner? What do you think is missing? What do you think is happening in that moment? Because even if it's integration versus balance, and I'm going to get into the balance in a second, there's still a period of inventory. Is this really working for you? Balance is when you're able to have your work life be your work life and your personal life be your personal life. No calls after 5 o'clock. No calls before 9 o'clock. I'm not at work. Some people find that difficult to do because, again, they want to achieve certain things, or they feel guilty or ashamed if they don't do other things on their personal time. But here's something that people don't think about. Some people say, well, you can't have it all. And I want to say that maybe you can't have it all at the same time. And so we get into balance versus counterbalance. What is counterbalance? Counterbalance is you have these life areas that I spoke of earlier, and you're making a decision on what's important to you and how you want to show up in those areas. Counterbalance means that you are flexible, that you're flexible. Meaning, this week, I need to focus on my family this weekend. Next week, I need to focus on a project that I'm doing for work. The following weekend, I need to focus on some me time. See, this is a method that can help you show up powerfully. The counterbalance, not so much the balance or the integration, but the counterbalance. See, every day, it's true we have 24 hours in a day, but every day is not the same. Yes, we have some structure within our day. For instance, I know Monday through Friday I have to go to work. But even my work day is not the same every day. The tasks that I have to do, the people that I see, the conferences that I have to have, all of them are not the same every day. So the first thing we want to do is dispel the myth that all things are created equal, because they're not. If most of my working time is at work, then I need to figure out a way to develop self-care either before work, during work, or after work. And in some cases, all three. Like, I need to get up in the morning I don't need 5 hours, but maybe I do need 10 minutes of meditation. And maybe during work, I really, really need to take my lunch break. Studies have shown that when we change our environment and we come back to it, go for a walk, we would call it a fresh air walk, go out of your office, go to somebody else's cubicle, come back to yours. If you're working from home, leave one room, go to another room, go downstairs, come back upstairs. That it helps with refreshing our energy and it makes us more productive. But what has happened is people are working before work, they're not taking their breaks, and they're working after work. And what's happening is that they are, I want to be, I have to be so thoughtful when I'm speaking, right? What they are doing is sucking the energy out of themselves voluntarily. And you might say, Lila, how is Coach B? How is that so? It's easy. If I feel or think that I have to work 24/7, that's my thinking. That's how I'm going to show up. If I feel like I don't deserve a break, that they're going to look at me a certain way, they don't understand me, I got to do this, that, and the other, that's my thinking. I'm responsible for my thinking. I'm responsible for my actions. Do I need to take a break? Yes. Do I need to have some regimen of self care before I go to work? I don't know. Some people are morning people, some people are night people. But are you included? Because if everything is created equally, then we would have no problems. All things are not created equal. So we have to find ways and means to offset the inequality that's in our day. And part of that is the self care, to be able to identify what's important to you. We know that working is tied to psychological benefits, it's tied to physical benefits, it's tied to financial benefits. And for some people, it's tied to their identity. So we know that work plays an important part of our lives, but that's not the only thing that's important. Is there a way to modify how you work? Is there a way to modify your calendar? You know, I speak a lot about calendars. Is there a way to modify your calendar to take a look at maybe the way that I'm operating right now is not even needed? Maybe I picked up a certain routine 2 or 3, 4, 5 years ago that I'm using now currently because of a situation that happened 4 or 5 years ago, and I just kept on doing the same old, same old. When in actuality, the routine I don't even need anymore. That I need to what? Revisit and reprioritize a new routine. Maybe what I was doing yesterday worked for yesterday's situation, but it doesn't work for this situation because guess what? I got older. I have different responsibilities. Maybe when I started my work life, I was a single person. Now I have a work life and I'm in a relationship. Maybe I have a work life and now not only am I in a relationship, I have children. So my priorities are changing. Maybe when I started my work life, I was in great health. Now that I'm in my work life, my career, maybe now I have medical issues. Maybe when I started my work life, I wasn't a caretaker, and now I'm a caretaker. So life is changing. We are changing, but we're not changing. And here's the strong suggestion: let's step back for a minute and do the inventory and identify what's important to you. Because our situations are always changing, are always changing. So, what I did 10 years ago in my work life is not going to work for who I am today. So, identify what's important to you and then create space to be the best that you can be. And that might mean I take out a calendar, and I gave this example earlier. This weekend I could do this weekend I could do that, this weekend I could do this. Maybe I don't do 99 chores in one day, because that's the other part of it. We spend so many hours at work, and then when we're home, we got a house to take care of. Sometimes we're in a relationship where we can get help with those things, and sometimes we're not. Sometimes we're single, trying to raise the kids, trying to keep the house together, go to work, maintain a relationship, and we're juggling. And we're juggling. And the one thing that you may hear people say that are constantly juggling their routine is, I don't have enough time to do all of this. I go to work, I'm so exhausted, I can't even take care of my home. People eat out a lot because they don't have time to cook. Hence why McDonald's, when they first opened up, became the biggest fast food chain. Because people were working so hard, they didn't have time to cook. But we'll get into that another day, another time. And then what? They say fast food is creating health problems. So not only am I stressed out from going, first of all, I'm tired from working so long. I come home, I'm not eating a proper diet. I don't have time to I don't make time to take care of myself. And we wonder why people are so unhappy at work. And if they're not showing that they're unhappy at work, of course, you're not going to go to work. Well, that's not true. I was going to say, of course, you're not going to go to work and be miserable, but that's not true, because we know people who come to work who are miserable. And the number one reason is there is either no work-life integration or too much of it, and they have crossed the invisible line. And what's happening is that their personal life and their work life looks one and the same, or they didn't create enough boundaries to have a work-life balance. And my suggestion to you guys is simply this. That take a look at your life as it is right now. Take a look at your life as it is right now. Again, what your work life looked like 10, 15, even 2 years ago with the pandemic and all is totally different than what it looks like now. And one of the things that we're dealing with right now is people have or are returning to work. And the same issues that they had pre-pandemic, they are going to face the same or greater mental and emotional concerns returning back to work. And you might say, well, Lila, how does this factor into coaching? I'm a life coach. And as I said, if I tell you that 4 out of 5 of my coachees, their number one concern is work-life balance or work-life integration. And what we talk about and work through is letting go of the Protestant work ethic. It was useful back in an agricultural sense, but many of us carry that. And because it's so tied to spiritual and or religious underpinnings, a lot of us don't even take the time to think, what is our personal value about work? Imagine, and this goes for entrepreneurs, solopreneurs, people who work for other companies. Imagine that if you take a day off, you feel guilty that you're not a good person or that you're being lazy or you don't value your work if you take a day off. That is ineffective, and it is sure enough not a way to show up powerfully in your life. So, yes, coaching has a lot to do with and again, I'm being careful and mindful of what I'm saying, has a lot to do with people being and showing up powerfully, being powerful and showing up powerfully in their lives. It is impossible to show up powerfully and be powerful if it's attached to guilt, shame, anger, resentment. So, do people need to do an inventory about what they believe? Because that belief system is shaping how you act. So, your belief system about how you feel about work, your role as an employee or an employer, has a lot to do with how powerful you're either showing up or not showing up in your life. This has been your Monday Morning Magic. Like, share, leave a comment, and please subscribe. And thank you to all the new subscribers who subscribed in the last few weeks. I really appreciate it. Have a great day, and I'll see you next Monday.